You know, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I have an idea that seems so simple, so straightforward, that I'm honestly so surprised that Disney hasn't already done it. I'm also surprised I haven't seen more fans suggesting it online. It's not some groundbreaking, high-concept pitch, it's something that's already sitting right in front of Disney, ready to be brought to life. In this video, I'll be giving multiple ideas for certain adaptations that Disney could make, that would likely unite this fractured Star Wars fanbase, and would likely be things that all fans would enjoy. Again, I really can't believe they aren't already doing this. Now, I grew up a die-hard Star Wars fan and still am to this day. The prequels came out when I was a child, the original trilogy movies are timeless classics, and the Clone Wars TV show is my favorite animated show of all time and one of my favorite pieces of the franchise. When Disney bought Lucasfilm and brought back Star Wars, I was cautiously optimistic, and honestly I really enjoyed The Force Awakens when it came out in 2015. Sure, it was pretty much a recycled plot of the original trilogy, but I thought the bones were there to build something incredible. Then, well, we all know what happened next. I won't dive into my thoughts on The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker because let's be real, those movies have been analyzed and criticized to death all over the internet. Suffice it to say, I think the potential for Disney's sequel trilogy was definitely there, but the execution to me was catastrophic. On the other hand, I absolutely love the spin-offs and I wish they did more of those. Rogue One was fantastic and Solo is still underrated to this day. Those movies captured the Star Wars feel in ways that really resonated with me. In terms of the other projects Disney has put out since they acquired the franchise, my feelings are pretty mixed. The Clone Wars Season 7 was incredible and a great way to send off the show. The Mandalorian didn't click for me the way it did for so many others, and the Book of Boba Fett was just okay, it was pretty forgettable. It had moments, but it felt like a missed opportunity overall. I didn't make it all the way through The Bad Batch, and it just didn't hold my attention. But Andor was amazing, a gritty and different take on Star Wars that really hit home for me. Ahsoka was also fantastic and is probably my favorite live-action Disney Star Wars show so far, and while I enjoyed Kenobi, I have to admit I had some gripes with it that probably most other people did. It felt like it could have been executed so much better. Tales of the Jedi was a pretty nice entry for the franchise, and I haven't gotten around to Tales of the Empire yet. I didn't finish The Acolyte, and as for Skeleton Crew, I started it, but I admit I don't really have much interest in finishing it right now. But y'all didn't come here to hear what I think about Star Wars projects, so here's my idea, here's what this video's about. Instead of coming up with new stories from scratch or relying on divisive creative decisions, Disney should just take advantage of the Star Wars source material that already exists. I'm talking about the plentiful canon novels and comics. There's so many amazing Star Wars stories out there that fans would absolutely eat up, and the problem is the majority of the fanbase doesn't read novels or comics, so those stories go largely unnoticed by mainstream audiences. Disney could easily adapt them into shows or movies, live action, animated, it doesn't matter. There's a treasure trove of stories just waiting to be explored. In this video, I'm going to share a few examples of stories that I think would make incredible adaptations. Now, I'll be pulling from the books and comics that I've personally read, so there might be plenty of great stories out there that I haven't gotten around to yet. But for now, let's dive into the ones that I think deserve to be brought to life. The first adaptation I want to talk about is Dark Disciple. For those of you who aren't already familiar with it, Dark Disciple was originally going to be a story arc in the Clone Wars animated TV show. But when Disney acquired the Star Wars rights, the show was canceled before the arc could be produced. Thankfully, the story wasn't lost. It was turned into a novel by Christie Golden, and let me tell you, it's one of the best Star Wars stories I've read. The novel focuses on two characters who are both incredibly compelling, but needed more time to shine in the broader Star Wars universe. First, there's Asajj Ventress, who fans will recognize as Count Dooku's former Sith apprentice. After her fall from grace, she tried to kill Dooku, failed, and eventually reinvented herself as a bounty hunter. Ventress is such a layered character. She's ruthless and cunning, but also deeply wounded and searching for her place in the galaxy. The second main character in this book is Jedi Master Quinlan Vos. Now, if you've watched the Clone Wars, you might remember Vos from his brief appearance in the episode where he teams up with Obi-Wan to track down Zero the Hutt. Vos is charismatic, witty, and definitely more of a rule bender than your average Jedi. But beyond that cameo, we really don't get much of his story in the show. Dark Disciple gives us a chance to see both of these characters in a whole new light. The story kicks off with Vos being given a highly unconventional mission by the Jedi Council: befriend Asajj Ventress, earn her trust, and convince her to help him assassinate Count Dooku and end the war. The hope is that by taking out Dooku, they can bring the Clone Wars to an end. So Vos goes undercover pretending to be a bounty hunter and teams up with Ventress. And then something unexpected happens. They fall in love. That's what makes Dark Disciple so special. It's not just a story about war or Jedi versus Sith battles, it's a story about connection, redemption, and the thin line between light and dark. As Ventress trains Quinlan Vos in the ways of the dark side, we see how their relationship evolves, how their trust deepens, how their feelings for each other complicate their mission. The stakes are high, the action is tense, and the emotional beats hit hard. It's a fantastic novel full of exciting action sequences, emotional turmoil, some of the best character development in all of Star Wars. What makes this story such a no-brainer for Disney is it was already planned as a Clone Wars arc. They could easily adapt it into an animated series using the same stunning animation style that they've perfected with the Clone Wars, Bad Batch, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire. The groundwork is already there, they just need to bring it to life. A Dark Disciple adaptation would work perfectly as a single season, maybe 10 episodes long, and I have no doubt it would be well received by Star Wars fans. It's the kind of story that bridges the gap between the grand epic battles and the deeply personal, emotional moments that make Star Wars so impactful. Ventress and Voss are both characters that fans would love to see explored more, and this story delivers that in spades. Honestly, it's hard to understand why this hasn't happened yet. Dark Disciple feels like such an obvious win for Disney. It's already beloved by fans who have read the novel, and an animated adaptation would make it accessible to the vast majority of Star Wars viewers who haven't seen it, haven't read it. If Disney wants to remind fans why they love this franchise, Dark Disciple would be a great place to start. Now, let's shift gears and talk about a story that I think is absolutely perfect for a live-action Star Wars movie. Lords of the Sith by Paul S. Kemp. Now, I know Disney has leaned heavily into TV shows lately, but this novel is literally begging to be turned into a movie. The plot, the pacing, and its thrilling action sequences are perfectly suited for the big screen. Lords of the Sith takes us back to the earlier days of Darth Vader's apprenticeship under Lord Sidious, a time when Vader was still wrestling with the loss of his humanity and fully cementing his place as the Emperor's enforcer. What makes this story so compelling is that it doesn't just focus on Vader and the Emperor, it also introduces us to Cham Syndulla and his band of resistance fighters on the Twi'lek homeworld of Ryloth. If Cham's name sounds familiar, it's because he's Hera Syndulla's father from Star Wars Rebels. Cham is one of the earliest figures in the fight against the Empire, and this story gives us a fascinating look at the roots of rebellion. The plot begins with Cham and his resistance fighters catching wind of an important development. Darth Vader and the Emperor are traveling to Ryloth. For Cham, this is an opportunity to strike at the very heart of the Empire. The story follows three main threads: the resistance fighters as they prepare their daring plan to take down Vader and Sidious, the perspective of an ambitious Imperial officer looking to rise through the ranks, and, of course, the dark and dangerous dynamic between Darth Vader and the Emperor. One of the most exciting parts of this story is the way it balances its focus between these characters and factions. Cham and his group of Twi'lek fighters are incredibly relatable. They're fighting for their freedom, risking everything to push back against the overwhelming might of the Empire. Their desperation and resourcefulness make the missions gripping, and you can't help but root for them, even knowing the odds are stacked against them. At the same time, we dive deep into Darth Vader's inner thoughts, which is where the novel really shines. It isn't the fully confident, unstoppable Sith Lord we see in A New Hope. This is a Vader who is haunted by the memories of Anakin Skywalker. He's grappling with his past, fighting to suppress any lingering feelings of guilt or humanity, while Sidious consistently manipulates him, testing his loyalty and pushing him further into the dark side. And then there's the action. The Resistance fighters manage to pull off an ambush that strands Vader and Sidious on Ryloth, forcing the two Sith to fight their way out. What follows is a sequence of relentless, brutal combat as Vader and the Emperor cut through wave after wave of Resistance fighters and dangerous wildlife. The novel also gives us some chilling insights into Vader's mind during these battles. He's not just killing for survival, he's feeding his rage, letting it consume him, because that's how he stays strong in the dark side. It's heartbreaking and terrifying all at once. And then you have Sidious, who's just as powerful, but fights with an eerie calmness, like he's toying with his enemies. The dynamic between these two as they fight side by side is something we haven't seen very much in Star Wars, and it's absolutely riveting. The story also follows an Imperial officer who's looking to climb the ranks by any means necessary. His perspective adds another layer to the story, showing us the political infighting within the Empire and how ambition can be just as dangerous as rebellion. What makes Lords of the Sith such a strong candidate for a live-action movie is how it balances character depth with high-stakes action. On one hand, you have these deeply personal moments with Vader, where we see him battling his inner demons and grappling with the consequences of his actions. On the other hand, you have this pulse-pounding story of Resistance fighters trying to outsmart and outmaneuver two of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. It's the kind of movie that would give fans everything they want: more Vader, more Sidious, more rebellion, and more action. Imagine seeing these epic sequences brought to life with today's visual effects and a rich cinematic depiction of Ryloth's landscapes and cities. And let's not forget the emotional weight. This isn't just an action story, it's a story about the devastating cost of tyranny and the relentless fight for freedom. It's about Vader's fall, Cham's courage, and the Emperor's sinister genius. It's a story that has something for everyone: deep character moments, thrilling battles, and the kind of moral complexity that Star Wars does so well when it's at its best. If Disney really wants to bring Star Wars movies back in a big way, Lords of the Sith would be a perfect choice. It's a self-contained story that expands the lore while staying focused and character-driven. And let's be honest, who wouldn't want to see more Vader and Sidious on the big screen? For the next adaptation, this one seems too obvious not to mention. I can't think of anyone who wouldn't want this. Expanding more on Darth Vader. He's not just the most iconic Star Wars character, he's arguably the most famous fictional villain of all time. Even people who've never seen a Star Wars movie know who Darth Vader is. His story is one of tragedy and transformation, of pain, loss, anger, and hatred. And honestly, anything that features Vader is typically always a hit. Just look at the Kenobi series. No matter how you felt about the show as a whole, it's hard to deny that the best parts were the ones with Vader in them. But here's the thing, while Vader is a central figure in Star Wars, there's still so much of his story left untold, especially in the years between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Thankfully, we do have some incredible canon stories about Vader that have been told through the Darth Vader comic series by Marvel. These comics dive deep into Vader's inner turmoil, his grief over losing Padme, and his rise as the Emperor's enforcer. The Vader comic series is relatively popular among hardcore Star Wars fans, but let's be honest, most fans just don't read comics. It's just not as accessible to the wider audience. And even for the fans who do read them, I think we'd all love to see these stories adapted into something we can watch and experience on screen. I've always dreamt of a Star Wars movie or show centered entirely on Darth Vader, a story that explores his inner path, his moral decay, and the sheer terror he brings to the galaxy. The Darth Vader comics would be the perfect foundation for this. I think these stories could be adapted into an animated TV series, similar to the Clone Wars or Tales of the Jedi. Each comic arc could be turned into an episode, running about 30 to 40 minutes apiece. And here's the thing, even though there's enough content in these comics to create an entire series, it doesn't have to stop there. Once they've adapted the existing stories, they could just continue the series with original episodes, creating new tales of Vader's exploits across the galaxy. I don't know anyone who wouldn't want that. This show would naturally be darker, more mature, and more adult-oriented than most Star Wars content simply because of Vader's violent and ruthless nature. But honestly, I think Star Wars needs more of that. Vader's the ultimate Star Wars character. He's the perfect blend of power and tragedy, and there's so much room to explore his character in ways that would satisfy both casual fans and hardcore enthusiasts. Looking at some of the Vader comic arcs that would be amazing to see on screen, one of my favorites is the story where Vader encounters one of Padme's old handmaidens, Sabe. This arc is absolutely heartbreaking and fascinating. Sabe initially wants revenge on Vader for Padme's death, but as the story unfolds, Vader discovers that there's actually an entire group of Padme's former handmaidens working together, plotting to kill him. The tension in this story is incredible, as Vader's past and present collide in ways that force him to confront his pain and guilt over losing Padme. Another standout arc features Vader going up against the Emperor himself. In this story, Palpatine, seeing Vader as replaceable, essentially sends him on a suicide mission, testing his loyalty and forcing him to prove his worth. It's a brutal story that really explores the dynamic between Vader and Palpatine, showing how even a Sith apprentice as powerful as Vader is still under the thumb of his master. And then there's the arc where Vader visits Exegol, the mysterious Sith planet that was introduced in The Rise of Skywalker. This storyline adds layers to the sequel trilogy, as Vader uncovers some of Palpatine's secrets, like his experiments with cloning and his plans for ultimate domination. It ties together different parts of Star Wars canon in a way that makes the galaxy feel richer and more connected. And these are just a few examples, but they give you an idea of how much potential these comics have for an adaptation. Each arc is packed with action, emotion, and insight into Vader's character. And when you think about how incredible these stories could look in an animation, imagine Vader just stalking through the shadows, his red lightsaber igniting. It's hard not to get excited. This kind of show could give us a deeper look into one of the most fascinating characters in cinematic history, and let's be real, who wouldn't want to see more of Vader at the height of his power? It's a project that would appeal to all Star Wars fans and bring something fresh to the franchise while still honoring its roots. Now, the last story that I think Disney could adapt is a novel that I read recently, Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. If you're a fan of Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, this book is a must-read. It dives into the early days of their master and apprentice relationship, giving us a deep, nuanced look at how these two iconic characters interacted and, at times, clashed. The story is set years before The Phantom Menace, at a point when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are still figuring out how to work together. Their relationship isn't as harmonious as you might expect. Qui-Gon, as we all know, is deeply attuned to the living force, which makes him more of a rebel in the Jedi Order. He often follows his instincts and goes against the grain. Obi-Wan, on the other hand, is much more by the book. He's young, disciplined, and eager to prove himself as a model Jedi. This dynamic creates a lot of tension between them. Obi-Wan struggles to understand Qui-Gon's unorthodox methods, while Qui-Gon feels like Obi-Wan doesn't trust his judgment. The relationship is far from perfect, and that's what makes it so compelling. You really get to see how they grow to respect and care for each other even when their views don't align. The central conflict of the novel takes place on the planet Pygel, where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are set to handle a volatile situation. Pygel is on the brink of signing a treaty, and there's unrest among the locals. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are tasked with mediating this situation, but things aren't as straightforward as they seem. There's political corruption, shadowy organizations pulling strings, and a group of dissenters using sabotage to disrupt this treaty process. On top of that, Qui-Gon is offered a seat on the Jedi Council, a position he's hesitant to accept because of how it might affect his relationship with Obi-Wan. The story has everything you could want in a Star Wars tale: political intrigue, action-packed battles, and moments of deep emotional conflict. It's a fantastic exploration of Qui-Gon's wisdom and Obi-Wan's growth, and it gives us a deeper understanding for both characters. Plus, there's a great subplot involving Qui-Gon's fascination with ancient Jedi prophecies, which adds another layer to his character and ties into some of the themes we've seen in The Phantom Menace. There's flashbacks in this book. We get to see a Padawan version of Qui-Gon and a younger version of Dooku when he was still a Jedi. It's just pretty awesome. Now, could this story work as a live-action adaptation? Probably not. The fact that it features younger versions of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan makes it tricky. Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor have aged a lot since the prequel trilogy, and while I adore both of them in these roles, I don't think they could convincingly play these younger versions without some heavy de-aging effects, or worse, recasting. That's why I think Master and Apprentice would function much better as an animated show. Disney has already proven they can create stunning animated Star Wars content with the Clone Wars, Tales of the Jedi, and all their other animated projects. They could use that same style to bring this story to life, allowing us to fully experience the early days of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's relationship. The beauty of this animated adaptation is it wouldn't lose any of the emotional depth or action that makes the novel so engaging. In fact, animation might even enhance it, giving the creators freedom to explore Pygel's unique landscapes and cultures in ways that live action might struggle with. This story, to me, is a no-brainer for an adaptation. It deepens our connection with two of the most beloved characters in Star Wars while delivering a fresh, compelling story that stands on its own. And for fans who love the Jedi Order's lore and moral complexities, Master and Apprentice offers you plenty to sink your teeth into. It's another win waiting to happen. So those are some of the best Star Wars stories that Disney could adapt into shows or movies, and honestly, we've barely scratched the surface. There are so many other incredible novels and comics out there that are just waiting to be brought to life. One I wanted to quickly mention before we wrap up is Brotherhood by Mike Chen. This novel follows Obi-Wan Kenobi right after he's been promoted to Jedi Master, and Anakin Skywalker after his promotion to Jedi Knight. It takes place in the early days of the Clone Wars during a conflict on Cato Neimoidia, a planet that's always been shrouded in mystery. What's great about Brotherhood is how it really digs into the evolving relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin. They're no longer just Master and Apprentice, they're equals now, and they're both trying to navigate what it means for their partnership. I personally think you could do a live-action version of this, as you could kind of de-age Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen the way that they did in the Kenobi show. I really think that would work for this one, but I could also see it being a really good candidate to be an animated show as well. The book introduces Asajj Ventress for the first time, showing her in those early days of her rise as Dooku's apprentice before anyone knows exactly what she is or who she is. And then there's two amazing new characters in this book: Rug Quarnum, a veteran Neimoidian security officer with a deep sense of honor, and Mil Alabeth, a Force-sensitive child with a perspective on the Jedi that challenges Anakin's worldview. The story has everything: emotional depth, political intrigue, and action-packed battles. It would be a perfect candidate for an animated adaptation, or dare I say it, a way to kick off another season of the Clone Wars. I know the Clone Wars technically ended with season 7, but I mean, hey, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing another season if it meant adapting stories like Brotherhood. So here's the thing: Star Wars is at a crossroads. Disney has been trying to find its footing ever since the sequel trilogy, and the results have been super mixed. Some projects have been amazing, like Andor, Ahsoka, and Rogue One. Others have been very divisive, or they failed to connect with fans. The truth is, it's hard to create something that resonates with everyone in a fan base as massive and passionate as the Star Wars community. But the thing is, they don't have to keep creating everything from scratch. They already have a treasure trove of incredible stories sitting right in front of them. Novels like Dark Disciple, Master and Apprentice, Lords of the Sith, and Brotherhood, comic series like the Darth Vader comics. Those are stories that I've indulged in that I would absolutely love to see on the screen. These stories have already been written. They're already beloved by the fans who have read them. The only thing missing is making them accessible to the larger Star Wars audience. Adapting these stories into animated shows or live-action movies isn't just an easy way to create new content, it's a way to bring the fan base together. These stories already have the DNA of Star Wars. They already capture that balance of epic adventure and personal conflict, moral complexity that made the franchise so iconic in the first place. Imagine how incredible it would be to see something like Dark Disciple brought to life with the same animation style as the Clone Wars, or a live-action Lords of the Sith movie that dives into the terrifying partnership between the Vader and the Emperor. Even a new season of the Clone Wars adapting Brotherhood or other early Clone Wars stories. These aren't just great ideas, they're literally no-brainers. As it stands, Star Wars feels so fractured. The fan base is divided, arguing over the sequels, the prequels, spin-offs, and everything in between. But I truly believe that adapting these incredible stories could bring people back together. They're stories that honor the legacy of Star Wars while offering something new and exciting for fans to experience. Disney has the resources, they have the talent, and most importantly, they have the stories. All they need to do is take that first step and start bringing them to life. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which Star Wars novel, comic, or any story you'd love to see adapted into a show or movie. Together, maybe we can remind Disney that the galaxy far, far away still has so much more to offer. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you guys in the next one.